Sage Wanderer coming at you from my van down by the river. So, many of you have been asking for the story of the time that I did battle with a witch. This story is close to me because the witch in question was related to me. So, this wasn't some random witch, this was someone that I knew and loved who got tangled up in witchcraft. I don't want to name the relationship that I had with this person, whether they were cousins or whether this was a niece or a, whatever, second cousin. I'm not going to name them. This person still has living children who may or may not be watching this channel. I don't want to identify this person too closely, although if they watch to the end, they will know who I'm talking about. I apologize to these children if you did not know this about your mother, but I think that you knew this about your mother. And I think you were aware of the things that were going on, and you were old enough at the time of her death to know the circumstances. So this is sensitive because we are talking about someone who has now passed away. So this is the story of the time I did battle with a witch over an extended period of time. Now, the reason this witch targeted me is because of the role I was playing in a custody battle over said children that I just spoke of. So the scenario is this. I had a family member who I watched grow up, who was younger than me, who I knew was involved in drugs, and everybody in our family experimented with drugs in some way or another. Some of them got hooked, some of them got real problems from it. Drugs and alcohol have been a problem for people in my family, most everyone, except for me, to tell you the truth. It just never had a hold on me. Cigarettes? Now, cigarettes was tough, but alcohol never owned me. Drugs never owned me. I've never had an addiction problem with anything other than cigarettes. And most of you know I quit smoking cold turkey. I guess it's been, I've lost count. It's been more than 2 months. So right at 2 months, it's been 60 days, nicotine free. I don't even think about it anymore. I'm a non-smoker now. It was relatively easy. The initial detox was the hardest part. Every once in a while I still want one. Last night I dreamed I had a cigarette, so I guess it's not completely gone. But at any rate, yes, I knew she had addiction issues. She was married and she had 4 small children at the time. She had 4 children at the time. 2 with the husband she was with and 2 from previous relationships. And one day she just drops the kids off at her mother's house, 2 of them. She dropped 2 of them off at her mother's house, took the smallest 2 with her, and never came back. And we did not hear from her for a very long time. She was gone for 18 months while the grandmother raised the children. Now, the grandmother attended my church. The mother of the said witch attended my church, and so her grandkids she brought to church, and they were in my Sunday school classes, and they were taught in my church, and we spent time together, and I got to know these children that were related to me remotely, and I was becoming because I was a pastor and also an older male family member, I was becoming a role model for the young children. I guess they were elementary age, approaching junior high, so they were through this process. By the end, they were preteens, right at being a teenager. And there was 2 of them in question. 4 kids altogether. 2 were left behind. 2 she took with her. So we did not know what happened to her. We heard that she'd gone to Mexico and was living upstairs in a cantina in Mexico, that she'd split up with her husband, and her husband had the 2 smallest children, and she had, her mother had the 2 oldest children. And we did not hear anything from her until one night she shows up in the middle of the night with the police. Now, I can only say that it must have been witchcraft that got her to convince 2 rural Texas sheriffs deputy sheriffs, that she had the right to come to her mother's house in the middle of the night and collect those children at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how she got cops to accompany her to this place, but they did. They seemed to be under her spell, I will not lie. I showed up, got a panic call from them. I showed up on the scene while they were forcing the children out of bed, making them pack their clothes in a bag and go away with their drug-addicted mother who'd been missing for 18 months. The police's argument was that the grandmother did not have any custodial agreement with the state and did not have any rights. The mother had not signed away any rights, and she was now here to pick up her kids. It didn't matter that she'd abandoned them for 18 months without any support or even a letter or a Christmas present or a birthday gift. To say that I was upset with the state of Texas, and that county in particular, was an understatement. And my righteous indignation rose up, and I said, I cannot believe you are pulling children out of bed on a school night and summarily giving them to a woman with a history of child abuse. Now, this woman had already had a felony conviction for child abuse against the middle kid, the youngest of the two oldest. She had already been convicted some years earlier for felony child abuse against this child. And these policemen were just going to give this woman these children back in the middle of the night and uproot them from school and uproot them from a comfortable home and take them out in the middle of the night while they cried and begged for their grandmother because they had almost forgotten their own mother after a year and a half. She got them. They took them. They went away with them. She took them to New Mexico, and they disappeared. The grandmother was very much concerned that they were being treated right, that they were being treated okay, and she managed to find out, thanks to the internet, an address for this person. Let's give the witch a name. Let's just call her June. We'll call her June. And so June had moved to a town in New Mexico, and so the grandfather and he asked me to go with him. Partly because being a preacher, I was a a witness beyond reproach. Like, most preachers are not going to give up their credibility as a minister to lie over something like this. So they needed an objective observer to go along to see where the kids were living. So I went and saw where they were living, not in the best of environments. One of the things that disturbed me the most, there was a sign on the front door of their house that said, "All you stupid little kids, wipe your effing feet off before you come in the house, or take your shoes off, because if there's any more dog poop in this house, I'm going to beat the living F out of all of you." That was a handwritten sign hanging on the front door of her house. So we took pictures. I was willing to testify what I saw as far as the kind of squalor and the fact that their home life there was clearly not as good as what they had been pulled out of in Texas. And I was prepared to testify against this person. And so I went to the hearing, and upon seeing me in the custody hearing, she was quite freaked out. She was quite freaked out that I was there, and she could not figure out why I was there. And I don't know, I guess it's just the devil's paranoia, and she didn't know what I was going to testify about. And I knew a lot of things about her. Like, I had known her since her infancy and known her in her entire life, and I knew things about her that that wouldn't have been irrelevant to testify in court about. But to her, she it was very disturbing for her that I was there. She was afraid I might say something really bad. Really, I was just there to testify what I saw about the house. So before I could testify, she took the stand and accused me of sexual assault on the stand, which was quite impossible because, to my knowledge, me and her had not been alone at all, ever. We'd never been alone. Not in any recent, not in 20 years. We had not ever been alone in the same room. So it was impossible for me to have sexually assaulted her, since we'd never been alone where there was not a witness. And honestly, she was so dinged out on drugs. Her mind was so addled that her accusation shocked her own lawyer. Her lawyer, she didn't brief her lawyer. She just came up with this on the stand, afraid of what I would say. She was just going to accuse me. And it was unbelievable. Her own lawyer was dumbfounded. The judge did not believe her. The prosecutor was like, really? And the judge at one point told her to just shut up, that he was tired of hearing this, that this is irrelevant. He's not here to try that. He didn't believe her when she said that. And of course, if you've never been falsely accused of something, you don't know how it feels. I was out of my mind, just angry. It was righteous indignation on tilt. How dare you accuse me of that when there's absolutely no circumstances where I could have done such a thing. So it was just a self-defense thing. And so anyway, she looked really bad. She lost custody of the kids in that moment because she was asked to give a drug test there at the court. Like they were going to snip her hair right there. Like they were going to have a lab tech come and do it right there. And she slipped out during the recess right after this conversation and left the kids in the custody of the state of Texas and split again to New Mexico without them. Abandoned them for a second time, essentially, to save her own bacon, since she was about to get drug tested and she was so full of meth. She was so full of meth it was going to come up in her hair. It had to. So at any rate, yeah, druggies really fear the hair test. The blood test, the pee test can be, not accurate. The hair test tells the story for as long as you've been growing that hair, however long your hair is. And she had some long hair. There was quite a history of drug use in a strand of her hair, I'm sure. She was not going to stick around and find out. But on the break, before she was supposed to be tested, I confronted her in the hallway outside the courtroom, and I was like, how dare you accuse me of that? We were family. I'm just looking out for these children. You're not a fit mother. You need to go to rehab, and you need to get cleaned up, and you need to get off the meth. And this is when she began to mock me as a preacher and began to really just be unintimidated at all by me as a older male family member or as a minister, and begin to mock me, begin to mock God, begin to make fun of me, accuse me of not being a real preacher, not being a real man of God, and saying I was a charlatan and a fraud. And at some point in there, I just, through the spirit of discernment, I realized I'm speaking to a demon, not a human. That this is not my family member talking to me. This is a demonic spirit speaking through her mouth. And I just come to the realization. I just know I'm talking to a devil. It's not my first time. I'm a preacher. It's not my first time to encounter a demon-possessed person. I just didn't put two and two together because she was family, and this was all court, and it was about drugs, and I just went, whoa, bam. And I'd heard rumors that she was dabbling in witchcraft. I had heard rumors that she was hanging in the circles of the Wiccan, the dark Wiccans, not the white witches, but the ones that engage in dark black witchcraft against each other, black magic. They fight each other. The witches in covens that engage in black magic, they fight against other witches. They fight against themselves, but they also fight against churches. They will go and curse your church. They will go and do chants and curse your cars in the parking lot while church is going on. Stuff like that. I know this happens. I have other stories where I've encountered these people and had to deal with them when they were on church property doing satanic and witchcraft and voodoo, rituals against our vehicles and against the people inside. And, I've had to escort them off the property of churches before as a church official. But I'd heard rumors that she was engaging this, but I didn't know for certain at that point. And that's when I just realized that I'm talking to a devil, and I speak right to it, and I go, oh, I get it. You're not June. I'm talking to a demon. And the demon looks me right in the face and says, ha ha. Well, if I'm a demon, why don't you buke me then? I didn't know what to do. I'm a love and peace preacher, at this point in my life. I'm all about love your neighbor, I'm just, really, the things that I talk about here, really, I'm a preacher of love and grace. That's, I've never been a combative person religiously. I preach love and acceptance, the real gospel. And so I didn't know what to do. I'd come from Pentecostal circles, and so had she, and that's why she used that term buke. Actually, it's rebuke. But she figured that, rebuking is what you do the second time. You buke first and then rebuke the next time. So she says, why don't you buke me? And I said, okay, fine, I rebuke you in Jesus' name. And she went, ha, 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 ha. Why aren't I melting? Chill ran up and down my spine, man. I mean, seriously, that freaked me out. So I'm going to have to do this story in 2 parts. But this is when I decided in that moment that I was going to shut my church down, close the doors, because I did not have the training to deal with a potential witch who was demon-possessed, that I didn't know what to do next. I rebuked her, then what? It didn't work. What do I do now? And I was so disheartened as a preacher, I decided to go back and get more training. And this is why I shut my church down. And then God literally spoke to me one day, sent me into that storefront church that I talk about quite a bit, that I will not name. Quit asking me to name it. I won't name it, and I won't name the bishops. I'm not going to name names in these videos. I'm smarter than that. I don't want to get sued. So, but at any rate, this is what ended me up in the devil fighting church, where I got fully equipped to do battle with witches and demons. And then I will tell you in part 2 about how these witches cursed me and put spells on me because of my involvement in this custody case, and because of that little buke and rebuke moment there in the hallway. And there's much more to this story, which includes a really dynamic exorcism that I did battle with this person, and I did get a chance to do battle with their demons in a real way. That comes in part 2. So this is the end of part 1. Part 2 is forthcoming. I just can't really fit them into a single video. So part 2 is coming next. All right, we'll see you in a bit.